Rain still clung to my hair when he finally shut the door, the thunder fading into the background like a distant heartbeat. For a second, we just stood there, dripping and ridiculous, and then everything between us tipped. He pulled me close as if the storm outside had pushed us together, and the room became smaller, our breaths louder, our clothes damp, the sheets warm and inviting. His lips found mine the way a memory finds its place, familiar, impossible, and impossible to resist. It began gentle, the careful testing of something fragile, and then it wasn't gentle anymore. Hands moved with a careful urgency, mapping the curves of a body they'd admired from afar for years. There was a delicious shiver that ran through me each time his fingers brushed my skin, like electric rain. We didn't speak. Words felt clumsy around what was happening. Instead, he whispered my name, breathy and raw, and every syllable felt like a promise, or maybe a warning. My heart thudded against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that matched the rain. I clung to him because it felt right, because after all those schoolyard crushes and stolen glances, this closeness was the one thing I had always wanted and never dared to hope for. Light from the window painted him in shadows and gold. The details of his face softened, and all I could focus on was the way he held me like he was afraid I might slip away. There was heat and laughter that floated soft and astonished out of us, and long pauses where the world fell away until there was only the two of us and the sound of rain. I know it looks like the end of a story, two people finally giving in. But this was only a moment, a bright, fragile gateway into a whole history I hadn't yet told. But to understand how I got here, let me take you back. Growing up, rainstorms were always a part of my childhood. The kind where the sky would suddenly open up, soaking the streets in minutes, leaving everything smelling like wet earth and summer. And almost every time he was there, Brian, my neighbor, my classmate, and the boy who somehow became the center of so many of my earliest daydreams. We were only a year apart, but when you're kids, that feels like a world. He was older, taller, and always seemed to know things I didn't. He'd ride his bike faster, climb higher, and laugh louder. I used to pretend I didn't care, but secretly, every little victory of his made my heart race with an odd mix of admiration and envy. We lived on the same street, our houses close enough that our bedroom windows faced each other. Sometimes at night, I'd see the soft glow of his lamp and imagine what he was thinking about. Did he ever glance at my window too? I'd tell myself no, of course not. I was just the girl next door, messy braids, scraped knees, always trailing after him. As we grew older, life got busier. High school swallowed us into different circles. He played basketball, effortlessly popular. I kept my head down with books and a small group of friends. Still, our paths crossed in subtle ways, walking home in the same direction, exchanging quick hellos, or catching each other's eye during neighborhood barbecues. There were little things I noticed that I never admitted to anyone. The way his voice dropped a little lower when he teased me. How he always seemed to wait an extra second to hold the gate open if he knew I was behind him. Or how once at a Halloween party, he brushed a strand of hair away from my face without a word. I laughed it off at the time, but inside, I felt the heat rise to my cheeks so fast it scared me. After graduation, we drifted even more. College took him to another city for a while. By the time he came back, taller, broader, and more confident, I was already working my first job. Our conversations became polite, casual updates, the kind you share with someone you've known forever but don't really know anymore. And yet, there was always something. A spark buried under layers of familiarity and distance. I'd catch myself wondering what his hand would feel like if it lingered just a little longer when he passed me something. Or how it might feel to be the one he looked at with that easy smile he gave other girls. I told myself it was silly. After all, he was my childhood crush, the boy from across the street, the one who probably never thought of me that way. I tried to tuck those thoughts away, to treat him like just another person in my life. But the universe has a way of pulling certain people back into your orbit when you least expect it. And for me, it happened on a rainy Friday evening. I'd stayed late at the office to finish some reports, and the sky had turned dark faster than I realized. By the time I stepped outside, the rain was relentless, pouring in sheets, soaking me within seconds. That's when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned, and there he was, standing under the awning, holding an umbrella, grinning like the years between us had never passed. My heart stumbled. That same boy from my childhood, now a man, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. And before I could say a word, he jogged toward me, umbrella tilted over both of us. It was the beginning of something I didn't know I had been waiting for all along. That's when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned, and there he was, standing under the awning, holding an umbrella, grinning like the years between us had never passed. My heart stumbled. That same boy from my childhood, now a man, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. And before I could say a word, he jogged toward me, umbrella tilted over both of us. It was the beginning of something I didn't know I had been waiting for all along. That night under the umbrella should have been ordinary, just two neighbors catching up in the rain. But from the moment Brian's shoulder brushed mine beneath that small circle of shelter, nothing felt ordinary at all. The rain poured down around us in heavy curtains, the sound of it so loud it felt like the rest of the world had disappeared. I could hear his breathing close to my ear, steady and warm, a quiet contrast to the storm. I tried to focus on the sidewalk, the puddles, anything but the fact that my childhood crush was inches from me, shielding me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You didn't bring an umbrella?" he teased, his voice light but threaded with something that made my stomach twist. I gave him a small laugh, tucking wet strands of hair behind my ear. I didn't think I'd be at work so late. Guess I wasn't prepared. He glanced down at me then, his eyes catching the streetlight for just a second. Good thing I was. The way he said it, so casual yet somehow protective, sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the rain. We walked slowly, the umbrella barely big enough for two. My hand kept brushing against his as we tried to stay close under its cover. Every accidental touch lingered a little too long. Every spark felt like a secret. I wondered if he felt it too, or if it was just me reading into everything the way I always had. At one point, a car splashed through a puddle, sending water spraying across the sidewalk. I squealed and instinctively leaned into him. His arm came up around me, pulling me closer against his side. For a heartbeat, I froze, aware of every inch of contact, his warmth, the solid press of his chest against my shoulder. "Still clumsy around water, huh?" he murmured with a grin, his arm not moving away right away. I rolled my eyes, but my cheeks burned. "You're never going to let me live that down, are you?" He chuckled, that same deep laugh I remembered from our teenage years, only richer now, more mature. And in that laugh, in the way he looked down at me like I was more than just the girl from across the street, something shifted. As the days passed, little moments kept happening. He started texting me after work, sometimes just to check if I got home safe, sometimes with silly comments about the rain like he was trying to turn it into our inside joke. One evening, when I mentioned craving hot chocolate, he actually showed up at my door 20 minutes later holding 2 mugs, shrugging like it was nothing. "It's just rain weather," he said, handing me one with that same half-smile. But his eyes lingered on me a little too long, as if daring me to see through the casualness. Whenever we sat together, whether it was on my couch with mugs in hand or on his porch while the storm clouds rolled by, the air between us felt charged. His knee would brush against mine, and neither of us would move away. Our conversations wandered from childhood memories to dreams we'd never told anyone else. And sometimes when he grew quiet, I'd catch him just watching me. It wasn't the way you look at a friend. It was slower, heavier, like he was memorizing details he didn't want to forget. One night, as we sat in his car waiting for the rain to ease, I dared to let my hand rest just close enough to his on the console. Not touching, but close. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him. He noticed. I knew he did, because his fingers twitched, as if fighting the urge to close that tiny gap. He didn't, not yet. But the silence that followed was louder than words. Every little thing between us had become a spark waiting to catch fire. And though neither of us had said anything out loud yet, I knew it was only a matter of time before the rain pulled us into something we couldn't step back from. It happened on one of those nights when the rain felt endless. I'd stayed late at the office again, and just like before, Brian offered me a ride home. By then it had become a quiet ritual, him waiting outside, me pretending I wasn't secretly thrilled every time. But that night, the storm was fiercer than usual. Sheets of water blurred the road. Thunder rolled through the sky, and the windshield wipers fought to keep up. The moment we pulled into my driveway, the power flickered out across the neighborhood. My house was swallowed in darkness. I sighed, pressing my forehead against the cool window. Great. Perfect timing. Brian leaned back in his seat, watching the rain slam against the glass. You'll freeze in there alone without lights. Come to my place until it passes. I hesitated, every sensible part of me whispering that it wasn't necessary. But then a flash of lightning lit up his profile, strong jaw, damp hair falling over his forehead, eyes glinting with something unspoken. My heart answered before my mind could. Okay, I said softly. We ran through the rain, laughing breathlessly as we reached his porch. By the time we got inside, we were both soaked, dripping water onto the hardwood. He handed me a towel, his fingers brushing mine as I took it. That small touch made me shiver harder than the cold. The storm raged outside, but inside, it was strangely still. The only sounds were our uneven breathing and the distant rumble of thunder. I wrapped the towel around myself, but his eyes lingered, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. You're shaking, he murmured, stepping closer. I'm fine, I whispered back, though my voice betrayed me. And then, in the thick silence, something snapped. He reached up, tucking a damp strand of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered at the curve of my cheek, warm against my skin. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I swore he could hear it. Brian, I started, but the words dissolved. His thumb brushed against my cheekbone, his voice low, almost reverent. Do you have any idea how long I've wanted this? The room tilted. My chest tightened. And in that suspended moment, I realized we were both done pretending. The distance between us evaporated. Two people pulled together by years of quiet longing, by the storm outside, by the truth we'd both been too afraid to say. And when his lips finally found mine, it felt like the world itself held its breath. The first kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate, years of silence crashing down in an instant. Brian's lips pressed against mine with a hunger I hadn't dared to imagine, and I melted into it, my hands clutching at the damp fabric of his shirt as if anchoring myself. The storm outside thundered louder, but all I could hear was the sound of us, ragged breaths, the soft, urgent pull of his mouth on mine. I had dreamed of this moment so many times as a teenager, wondering what it would feel like if my childhood crush ever saw me the way I saw him. And now that it was happening, it was everything and more. The reality was raw, electric, and terrifying in the best way. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his forehead resting against mine, his breath warm. Tell me to stop, and I will, he whispered, his voice strained, almost breaking. I shook my head, my voice trembling. Don't stop. That was all it took. He kissed me again, slower this time, savoring every inch like he was making up for lost years. His hands framed my face, then slid down my arms, sending shivers through me. I felt cherished, consumed, and wanted all at once. The storm howled against the windows, lightning flashing across the room, but in his arms, the chaos faded. He led me carefully to the couch, as though even in his urgency, he wanted to be sure I was safe, comfortable. We sank down together, our lips never parting, his hands threading through my damp hair. Every brush of his skin against mine left me trembling. When his hand trailed down to my waist, pulling me closer, I felt his heartbeat racing in time with mine. I wasn't sure where my body ended and his began, just that we fit, like we were always meant to. He pulled back again, his gaze searching my face as though asking silently, "Is this real? Do you want this as much as I do?" I answered by leaning in, kissing him with all the emotions I'd kept buried for years. The longing, the fear, the hope. His quiet groan against my lips told me everything I needed to know. He felt it too. The air between us thickened, warm and charged, like the storm outside had seeped into the room. His whispers, my name, half-formed words of disbelief, tangled with mine, every sound sending a rush of heat through me. It wasn't just physical closeness. It was intimacy that had been waiting, quietly smoldering, since the days we'd sat side by side as kids, never daring to admit what was there. Now it was unstoppable. Time blurred. Minutes could have been hours. All I knew was the taste of him, the weight of his hands, the way he held me like I was both fragile and the most important thing he'd ever touched. When the thunder cracked loud enough to rattle the windows, I jumped slightly, but Brian only pulled me tighter against his chest. "I've got you," he whispered, and I believed him. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into the feeling, the storm raging outside, his warmth surrounding me, the realization that I was finally in the arms of the boy who had haunted my daydreams for years. Only now he wasn't just a crush, not anymore. He was a man who wanted me just as fiercely. Every kiss deepened, every touch carried more weight, until there was nothing left between us but the truth. We had crossed a line, and neither of us wanted to go back. The rain eventually softened, but I barely noticed. My world was no longer dictated by the weather outside. It was ruled by the storm Brian and I had unleashed together. And in that unforgettable moment, wrapped up in him, I knew with aching certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The storm passed sometime in the early hours, but inside Brian's apartment, it still felt like time had stopped. I woke to the soft hum of silence, the faint smell of rain lingering in the air, and the steady rhythm of his breathing beside me. For a moment, I didn't move, afraid that if I did, the night would vanish like a dream I wasn't ready to let go of. I turned slightly, my eyes tracing the lines of his face as he slept. He looked so peaceful, so unguarded, nothing like the confident boy I remembered from childhood or the man who had just held me like I was his entire world. Seeing him like that, I realized just how much had changed between us, and how much more was about to. My chest ached in the sweetest way. This wasn't just a reckless moment, wasn't just the storm taking over. It was something deeper, something that had been waiting quietly inside both of us. Last night had pulled it out into the open, raw and undeniable. Still, a nervous thought crept in. What happens now? Would we pretend it never happened? Would he regret crossing that invisible line with me? As if he could sense my spiral, Brian stirred. His arm, already draped loosely over my waist, pulled me closer, and his lips brushed my temple in a sleepy kiss. "You're still here," he murmured, his voice husky. I smiled, though my throat tightened with emotion. "Of course I am." He opened his eyes then, meeting mine with a look so tender, it nearly unraveled me. "Good? Because I don't want last night to be the only time." The words hit me like a spark in the dark, sudden, bright, and undeniable. Relief, joy, and longing swirled together, and I couldn't stop the tears that pricked at the corners of my eyes. "I don't want it to be either," I whispered back. The truth hung between us, fragile but powerful. We didn't have all the answers yet, how to explain to anyone else, how to navigate what this meant for us. But in that quiet morning, with his arms around me and the storm washed away, I knew one thing for certain. I'd never forget the night I got caught in the rain with Brian. And whether it turned into a secret we carried or a love we finally let the world see, it had already changed me forever. Some moments carve themselves into your memory, so deeply that no matter what happens after, you'll never be the same. For me, it was the night the storm pushed me into Brian's arms, my childhood crush, my secret longing, now something more. Maybe it was fate, maybe just chance, but it felt like the world paused just for us. Have you ever had a moment you wished could last forever, even if it changed everything? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story.